Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome to another tier ranking video. Tonight, I'm going to talk about Ninja Turtles. I'm going to rank as many different iterations of Ninja Turtles as I can. I found another cool pre-made list on tiermaker.com, and the link is in the description. And this one has somewhere around 34 or 35 different Ninja Turtles projects, including comics and video games and movies and TV shows. And some of the stuff I've talked about ad nauseum, and I'm going to try not to spend a ton of time on this, although I have not clocked one of these at less than an hour yet. And I just did, the last one I did was like an hour and a half. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I might get rambly and stuck on one of these again. But this one I think is likely to go a little bit quicker. I guess we'll see. But anyway, welcome if you're watching live. Thanks a lot for being here, and appreciate you looking at it after the fact as well. We'd love to see your comments and whether or not you agree with my rankings, or if you would put things in different places. And I'm sure a lot of us will have different feelings about at least some of these, and also a number of these I imagine there will be a big consensus on, particularly some of the D and F tier stuff. I do know for sure that there's at least one of these things that I'm probably going to put in D that a lot of people won't agree with, and you might be able to guess right away what that is, but we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So here is the list, and as I've been doing, I'm going to zoom in and out of this so that we can see the, give me just a second, actually let me fix this, because for some reason this is not sized quite properly. I don't know why that got messed up. But anyway, I've been zooming in and out a little bit just so that we can see the material a little bit better. So, like I said, once again, I did not put this one together. This is a pre-made one. I might start doing more of these myself, but I keep finding things that I was thinking about putting together that are done more or less the way I would do them, or it's kind of fun just to see what ends up popping up as I go. And like I've said before, it's kind of fun to treat this like trivia a little bit as well. Like, what do I recognize? Do I remember these things? How well do I know them enough to even rank them? I have added a haven't seen category because I know that at least a few of these things I don't know, particularly some of the video games, like the handheld stuff. Thomas Lowe, spoiler, Donatello is S tier. Yeah, we're not ranking the Turtles themselves, although I might do a character. It's your ranking list at some point with this. I've done 2 of those so far already. I did one for Tick characters. That got really weird and obscure. And I did one for Next Generation characters for Star Trek. But this one is going to be projects, iterations. And this is another thing that could be done for lots of different properties, like Batman, especially, and Superman, Star Trek, lots of things. Although Star Trek I'm leery of doing that with, because I don't really want to rank New Trek and hurt anybody's feelings with that. But Ninja Turtles, I've always said, is like Batman in that it's surprisingly versatile, and there's 1,000,001 different ways to do them. Not that every single version is necessarily valid, or at least the way it ends up being conceptualized and what the execution turns out to be. Just because it exists doesn't mean that it's great or necessarily valid. But theoretically, you could do Ninja Turtles pretty much any way you want to, and within reason. And there's just so many different versions, varieties, and flavors of Ninja Turtles, and it's really weird because it feels like such a niche thing, and yet it's one of the most popular things and versatile things that's ever existed. It's very, very strange. So let's go ahead and start looking at the items here, and they appear to be in no particular order, so we'll just run them down that way. First of all, Batman versus Ninja Turtles, I've talked about, again, ad nauseum. I love it a lot. It is fan service in the best way possible, as I've always said. It's I see as kind of the template, the blueprint for how to do a great crossover if you're not trying to, at least if you're not trying to tell a real deep and moving story. Batman vs. Ninja Turtles is just all about the fun of it, and it doesn't waste any opportunity for really good fan service, and it is just not that concerned with being brilliant and changing hearts and minds and reworking, reinventing the wheel or anything. It just it seems happy that it gets to exist and wants to make sure that it's not wasting anybody's time. And for that, I'm going to put it in A list. I love that movie a lot. I hope that at some point maybe we'll get lucky and we get a sequel to it. And I like it better than the comics. And then we kind of lumped all the old video games together for the Cowabunga collection. And as a release, I would have to put Cowabunga collection in S tier. It is really classily put together. If you haven't taken a look at that, I highly recommend it. It is what, like $40 on Switch maybe? I don't remember the release price for that now, and it's probably gone down a little bit since it came out. How long have we had that now? Like a year? Maybe close to that. But the Cowabunga collection includes all of the 90s 8 and 16-bit games, and that's the fighting games, so the Tournament Fighters games for Genesis, Super Nintendo, and NES, believe it or not. There was Tournament Fighters for that, and it's hilarious, but like surprisingly fun, just for a little 2-button fighter. It's one of the only like 1v1 fighters on the NES. And anyway, it was all movie aesthetic, which was really interesting and rendered surprisingly well in 8-bit. But it has, of course, the beat-em-ups with Turtles in Time and Hyperstone Heist and the original arcade game. And I think it's got the arcade versions as well as the home console versions. And it's got, all the modern features that we tend to do for when we re-release old games from that era, like being able to rewind and save at any point. And it also has a ton of like encyclopedic entries. You can learn a lot about the background making of those games, and it's insanely thorough. I haven't looked real deep into that, but the way that's put together is super impressive. It's a whole archive, and there was a lot of research done for that. So some of those games are better than others, but as a singular release, I have to put the Cowabunga collection at S tier. And then Shredder's Revenge is somewhere between A and S. I mean, it's wonderful. And we recently got an update that added a couple of characters, and I think there might be some new features with that. I haven't looked real deep into it yet. I've played it once or twice since that was added, but I haven't really messed around with the extra stuff with it yet. But it is surprisingly deep for a beat-em-up, and it kind of takes the Turtles in Time model and really beefs it up and goes to 11 with it. I've got gameplay on the channel for that if you want to get a sneak peek at that before you get it. Austin and I played all the way through it, and we were thoroughly impressed with it. I was surprised that I was okay with the change in animation, where it looks, to my eye, a tad cutesier. The models are not exactly as they were back in the day, and it's not trying to be exactly 16-bit or just like the arcade versions, but it's a really good throwback. Like, it reinvents it to some degree, but it's faithful up to, faithful enough up to a point, I think, and it kind of recycles some of the story, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's very thin, of course, of Turtles in Time, but, real, fun, loving sort of way. It's wonderfully colorful, and my favorite character with that was I'm surprised to say April. I keep playing with her constantly, and thought it was kind of odd that she was playable, and then she was the most fun character to play with. I thought, Thomas Lowe, I still haven't watched Batman vs. Ninja Turtles. Check it out. It's great. Is this movies only, or you're including TV shows and video games? Yeah, I'm including lots of different things. And like I said, I pulled this up from a list that somebody else had made already for this tier list, so I might not have thought to put it together like this, but when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I kind of want to rank these. I'm not going to rank superhero movies that often because you guys hear me talk about this stuff all the time, and I've done plenty of lists and things with those, but when they show up in something like this, I'll rank them with the rest of this, but I'm probably not going to do like just Batman movies or just MCU or something. Although I am thinking about eventually doing an update to my ranking for the MCU movies. It wouldn't be a tier list like this, though. It would be, in order from best to least. James Curry, are you only ranking stuff you're personally familiar with? Yeah, anything I haven't seen, I'm going to throw, or played or read or whatever, I'm going to put in the haven't seen box at the bottom. Chewbacca's Lover, my Chuck E. Cheese had Turtles in Time in the arcade. Yeah, I think that's how a lot of folks probably played it. And he says it was one of those where you had to put a token in to continue after you die. Yep, that's the way it used to work. That's the way the cookie used to crumble. And those were quarter guzzlers, token guzzlers, most certainly. Okay, now we get to Turtles Forever, which I love. That's another. It's really interesting that we have a couple of movies that I think of now as like textbook. Here's how you do a crossover movies. One of them is Batman versus Ninja Turtles. The other is Turtles Forever. This is kind of the, in a weird way, the original comic multiverse movie. And obviously comic fans, and this had been done some in cartoon shows on television, of course, but we hadn't really dipped our toe into it too much in anything mainstream with movies, be it direct-to-video or in the theater. And so this was kind of our first big foray into that before the Arrowverse did it on TV, and before we got to the big multiverse saga now with the MCU. I'm gonna put Turtles Forever in somewhere between A and B tier. I'm tempted to go as high as A. I still find some of the voice choices really distracting in that, really takes me out, but I like the plotting of it quite a bit. I think it's really imaginative. I love what's done with Utrom Shredder in that, and comparing him to the sillier 87 version. I love the whole Turtles Prime idea, and going back to the Eastman and Laird black and white Turtles. That whole thing is a ton of fun. And if you haven't seen that, it's worth watching even if you haven't watched through the 2003 series. I think you get more out of it if you're already familiar with that show and if you watched all the way to the end. I've still never watched that entire show. I've seen a decent amount of it now, but I watched that a long time before I even saw more than a handful of episodes of that, and it wasn't lost, didn't have a hard time watching it. And the animation is really quite good in that as well. But that's another movie that just does not waste its potential. There's so much cool stuff you can do with that, and it did not waste anything with it. It was also the first big Turtles thing to kind of internally recognize how versatile the property is again, and just how many different incarnations of Turtles there are. It got kind of crazy with it when we get into the big, like, Shredder vortex, or not vortex, but there's this bit where he's looking at different monitors and looking at all the different Turtles universes, and there's a bunch of really random ones that aren't like any kind of like big show or comic or anything, that I don't even know where they got them. At this point, you wouldn't even have to try as hard as that did to show a ton of them. In some ways, it would almost have been better if that could have been made a few years later, especially after Nickelodeon bought the property, because then they're able to get around some rights issues they had at that point. Because for some reason, they could use the 87 iterations, versions of the Turtles, but they weren't allowed to bring in any of the voices, even if they'd wanted to. And at this point, we don't have that problem anymore, and some of the original actors even came back for Shredder's Revenge, which is great. It was really surreal to get to hear Donatello's voice again, and all of that. Hi, Don Power Ranger, good to see you again, man. Bob the Hun, remember when the 2012 Turtles tried to copy Turtles Forever and did it not nearly as good? Yeah, I still enjoyed it. I think the last episode of that show did it better than the first time they crossed over with 87, and that whole thing was really confusing. It's been a while since I've watched it. It's been a few years, so I can't speak to it real well. But I remember the whole thing not making a great deal of sense. But I kind of liked the novelty of seeing the 87 Turtles rendered in 3D and vice versa. Like, that whole thing was fun. But it was kind of nice that they went back to it for the finale and made that a big love letter to both shows, particularly because 2012 was an update of that show. So I thought it was totally fair for both of the other animated series at that time, because we've had even another one since then, to go back to 87. Because in 2000, for the 2003 show with Turtles Forever, that comes out, what, 08, 09, I think. That was about comparing and contrasting the more serious, more Eastman and Laird inspired version with the 87 cartoon, and then still recognizing that it's still not even as dark and edgy looking as the original comics were. So it's like a midpoint between them. And that comparison contrast was a lot of fun. And then with 2012, it was all about how that show is an update of the 87 cartoon and was aimed at the same audience, but, 15 years later. Maybe 20 years later. Code Geese Anime Fan, I like that you don't just agree with popular opinion. That's why I liked your Mutant Mayhem review so much. We are about to segue into that. You judged it based off your own thoughts rather than just going with what's popular. I appreciate that. That's the only way I know how to do it. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I like something more than I do, but I'm going to give it a fair shake, of course, and I'm always going to respect people that feel differently about it than I do, because we all are different people that come from different places with different experiences and backgrounds that lead us to be the people we are and like what we like. We're also all at different points in our lives, and sometimes I'll go back to something that I loved 20 years ago and don't appreciate anything like as much now. And some of you guys are a bit younger than I am, and some of us are the same age, and we still have a few viewers that are even older than I am, and sometimes it does depend a little bit on where you are in your life and stuff. But anyway, speaking of Mutant Mayhem, yeah, that is D tier for me. I did not see what the fuss was about with that movie, and I've only seen it the one time. I still think I might appreciate it a little bit more on another viewing, but just with where I am with it right now, I have not been in a hurry to see it again. I watched it one time in the theater. I found it uncomfortable through about half to 2/3 of it, and it was winning me over a little bit more in the third act. I will say I like how it ends a lot more than I like how it starts, but that is a major taste issue thing for me. In some ways, it just felt like it was for a completely different audience that I was not a part of. And the animation is okay. Like, the way it's rendered, it looks great. I wasn't a big fan of the character models, and I just didn't like a lot of the approach. I might appreciate it more if that continuity continues. Well, and it's going to. I shouldn't say that. It's getting a TV show. But, like, if it gets more movies after that, and we start getting into more of the sci-fi and, like, actual ninja stuff, and it starts to look at more of the sides of Ninja Turtles that I like, I might start to appreciate it more. But there is kind of a... I don't want to say vulgarity to it, but there's like an immaturity to that movie that is, I get the appeal for the audience that's aimed at, and it's just not me. It kind of feels like what Ninja Turtles might have been if it was always owned by Nickelodeon, and Rise of the TMNT is that way as well, in somewhat of a different way, where it feels like a, I don't know, 2010s, like, Nickelodeon show or Cartoon Network show, and that movie feels a little bit more like a 90s Nickelodeon thing in some ways. And then also, like, I don't mean to be hypocritical about it, but also the problem with it for me was it was too modern in its, not just sensibilities, but in its references and things, where, like, it dates itself real hard, real fast, and Ninja Turtles has always had some pop culture references, but I thought I went way too hard into that arena, and it felt like people my age trying really hard to write modern teenagers, and I found that somewhat difficult to enjoy and appreciate. I thought the performances were good. And I don't mean just sit here and review it again, but I just wanted to give an explanation for why I was going that low with it. And none of the turtles really grabbed me. I thought they were a little bit too interchangeable at the end of the day. But yeah, it kind of just wasn't my thing. Like I appreciate it if you liked that movie. It was also weird because it apparently didn't perform super well, but it was really well reviewed. And like I don't hate it, but I didn't enjoy it until toward the end. So anyway, Senior Sticks, $2 super chat. How do you see the future of IDW and losing properties? I haven't been looking into that real deep lately because I'm not keeping up with modern comics very much at all. So I kind of would need to do a little bit of research and see what's happening in the moment with IDW. I've heard they've lost some things. Are they losing Ninja Turtles? I kind of hope not, even though I haven't been into that lately. Well, surely they're not, right? Because they've been doing all that Last Ronin stuff. So I guess if they lose very much more, they'll have to really put a lot of their eggs in the baskets they have, like Ninja Turtles, like Star Trek. Pardon me if that caught on the microphone. And then they'll have to try to procure some more properties, I suppose. The Universe, it had good legs was the thing. Okay, so it just stayed in the theater for a while and didn't do huge guns, but it kept staying at a particular rate of sales, I guess, is what he's saying. Bob the Hun, pop culture references are only cool when it's something 10 years ago. Nobody wants to hear pop culture references about modern crap. I feel like right now, especially because we're just really divided and segmented, segregated. Maybe that's kind of a bad word, but what I mean by that is we don't have the big pop culture touchstones that we used to. So the most quote unquote popular things, the things that seem to be making big businesses money, are never things that anybody I know is paying any attention to and cares about, which is weird. Like, that's not so much what it was like when I was younger. And so there is kind of this feeling that whatever the kind of split up. And so if you, and I don't mean that, I want to always have to go backwards, but I think sometimes you do have to do that to grab onto the things that more people still remember en masse and still care about as a collective, as opposed to these, bazillion things that a few of us are paying attention to. Okay, moving right along. Coming Out of the Shells tour is hilarious, but naturally that's F tier. Nobody's going to be surprised by that. We're skimming stones. That is a fascinating project to me because I love talking about it, but I don't want to sit through it. It's so much fun to make fun of after you've looked at it and you're telling someone else about it that has never watched it, and you just show them short clips. I had more fun putting together that old scripted rewind than a lot of other things that I did, and I'm really glad I made that video, but oh my goodness, is that hard to sit through. I tried to finally show it to Jason, and I couldn't get through more than half of it. But some of that music is really funny, and a little nugget for those of you that are not aware, if you play the Turtles in Time arcade version, you actually get Pizza Power at the start of that, which comes from the Coming Out of the Shells tour, because those released right around the same time. Okay, I don't know what this other thing is that is those same outfits. Let me look at this real close. Oh, We Wish You a Turtle Christmas. Okay, I've actually never seen that. I think that's using those same outfits and was around the same time. There were a couple of these direct-to-video things that I think were trying to get, milk as much use out of those outfits as humanly possible. Senior Sticks Coming Out of the Shells needs a reboot. That would be hilarious. Code Geass, Coming Out of the Shells deserves a slightly higher rating just for being so wild. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little obligatory. Like, I do think it's that bad. But like, I also would feel sort of bad for Mutant Mayhem to put it on the same level as Mutant Mayhem. Like, I think that's I try not to compare these things too much, but that's sort of the exercise, right? So I feel like I'm doing this massive unfair insult to that if I were to do that. Let's back out just a little farther here. Yeah, AMC, maybe collective wasn't really the word I was looking for, but you know what I mean. Just, as a society, because we live in one of those, in a society. Bob the Hun, $2 super chat coming out of their shell sounds like Christian rock. That is so insightful. I've never had that thought, but that is exactly right. Particularly the ballads, right? April's got that ballad. Or is April singing to Michelangelo? I can't remember, but there's a ballad in there at the end that's very Christian rock, and even like some of the bigger songs, I use bigger very loosely, but the ones that more of the kids that watch that probably remember, like Tubin and Pizza Power and all that. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like Christian rock. That's absolutely true. Senior Sticks, what Turtles property is the most equal to the Star Wars Holiday Special? Definitely the Coming Out of Their Shells tour. Particularly because it was a video that people kind of passed around. Like, it wasn't illegal. It wasn't a thing that didn't air and that was hard to get your hands on or anything, but it wasn't a thing that aired on TV, or if it did, it was once or twice and never again. Everybody I knew that saw that bought the VHS tape, and that's how popular that was because people remember it, and I've still got mine. I still have the one from when I was a kid back here on my shelf with the beat up box because we watched it that much. That video has the game show host from Supermarket Sweep in it. My mind was blown when I realized that. Remember, if you've seen that, remember the news anchor guy, that obnoxious guy in the intermission in the middle of that, where he's like, I've never even left my newsroom before. Yeah, that's the host of Supermarket Sweep. It's crazy. Okay, next up is the 2012 show. Now, some of these things I will rank, but I won't have necessarily seen all of it. The 2012 show I've seen at least half of, if not more, of the first season, and a smattering of episodes throughout, although not as much as 03. Like, there's whole seasons I've not seen one episode of, and then I saw the crossovers with 87. I'm going to put it in B or C tier. I think I'll put it in B tier. I think I actually like it that much. It gets shockingly stylistic when they start getting into the more street level and ninja stuff. I love all the silhouette and color stuff that they start doing when they really get into Shredder in the first season. And it's a wonderful kid show. I kind of like the model of the formula of that show, where every episode there's kind of a nice moral for kids, and I wouldn't want that for every show, but it was something that we've kind of lost a little bit with superhero cartoons and cartoons that are based on kind of action properties like this, where you can sort of have that midpoint right between a educational, like, preschool show, or and Ninja Turtles is a little bit better than preschool, but it does have a little bit of that, right? Like, it's a little bit like PBS messaging in the middle of your Ninja Turtles, and it's not super heavy-handed about it. It does kind of spell out the moral at the end, but it just feels like it's actually keeping in mind, like, the age group that it's aimed at, and hoping to be a little bit positive and let the Turtles be role models and, like, learn something as they're teenagers, immature kids, trying to find their place in the world and become more responsible. And there's just a lot of good responsibility messaging in that show. And I don't think every episode did that, but a lot of them did. And the IDW comics, I read a few of those, did the same thing. And every time I would look at one, I'd be like, maybe this is a little bit spelled out, but I never disagreed with what it was saying to my kids. And, not that I have to agree with every idea that's in a show or whatever, but what I mean is it all felt positive. It all felt like it was really being considerate about your children, and hoping that it could help them think about responsibility and what it means to be what self-sacrifice really is, what being a hero really is, all of that. And I liked that a lot about it. And also just simple stuff like, how to take care of your family and how to not be selfish and, kind of golden rule type stuff. Some of that is missing now. And I kind of appreciated that was there. Call me a softie, but I appreciated that about it. Last Ronin, people are obsessed with now. And I liked it. I don't think it's S tier. I will go A with it. Maybe I should go B, though. I'm not sure. I need to read it again. I was let down a little bit by the ending, I have to say. I didn't think that it ended quite as well as it started or where it got to in the middle, but I think it realizes the Frank Miller nature of Ninja Turtles as well or better than anything ever has. And the art in that is spectacular. I'm really excited that that's being adapted to a video game. I don't need a whole continuity about it. Like, I don't need to see the Turtles at the end of Last Ronin growing up and becoming the new Ninja Turtles, but that's what they're doing. I don't know if that started yet. I think maybe it has. I don't really have any interest in that. Like, I might read it just out of morbid curiosity, but like I didn't need that to happen. It's one of those things, right, where it gets so popular that they've got to keep going with it. It's the biggest thing IDW has had in a long time. Never mind the biggest Ninja Turtles thing there's been in a long time. And at this point, they might as well just run forward with that continuity and put in a cap off to the Waltz continuity, because I don't think anybody cares about that anymore, including myself, I have to say. Those books are here, and I will rank that, but I don't really care for where things were going 12, 13 issues after issue 100 when Waltz leaves, and I quit reading it. I got really bored with it. Once Jennika kind of takes over and we get a new writer, I was bored with it. It wasn't bad, I just didn't care. And it was really decompressed. It just was taking forever to get anywhere, and I didn't really like the status quo, and maybe I'll jump back in at some point and skip around a little bit and see if it gets more interesting, but was not my bag at all. Okay, the original Mirage comics, I don't know how to put anywhere but S tier, especially if we're just talking about the stuff that Eastman and Laird did together for those first few years. I've reviewed that stuff on the channel. I'm not going to talk about it too much now, but that deserves S tier, particularly for the big iconic stuff that my favorite Ninja Turtles things use after that. I am a bigger fan overall, collectively, I'll use that word again, of the Waltz IDW continuity, but this is the blueprint for all of that, and it's certainly more stylish and over the top and more satirical than that stuff is. Waltz is a little bit more down to earth, and IDW is a little bit more whimsical and out there, and I love that about it. And the black and white art with that is unparalleled in comics. The biggest highlights are the Leonardo micro series. I think it's maybe even the Raphael micro series that introduces Casey Jones. That is a spectacular issue. The issue that brings back the Shredder and destroys the collectible shop is the antique shop is wonderful, and the Northampton stuff right after that is incredible. Anyway, yeah, so that's got to go all the way to the top, even if I like some of it more than some other of it. Chewbacca's Lover, for me, it's a tie between 1990 Turtles and 2003 Turtles. I think a lot of people feel that way, and my favorite thing about 03 is that it feels like an animated adaptation of that show, or of that movie, pardon me. AMC, I'd go A, possibly S for 2012. Oh, wow! It's actually my favorite Turtles overall, even though I was in the age bracket for 03. Fascinating. I gotta see where that ultimately goes, because I would maybe move it somewhere else if I saw the rest of it. AMC Comics KMR is always awesome, but let us not forget that 87 Uncle Phil was James Avery, aka Uncle Phil. Yep, that is true. I have not forgotten that. Bob the Hun, I got bored with IDW Turtles as well. I was waiting the whole time for them to reconcile with Splinter, and they were just focused on other stuff. I think that finally happens, though, right? So you might have fallen off even before I did, because I made it all the way to 100. I keep saying, I'm pretty sure it was 100. And keep in mind, if you were as diehard into that as I was, if you read everything, it was actually more like 200 comics. So the main continuity, we're talking again about IDW Ninja Turtles, which starts back in 2011, 2012, 2010, 2011 or 12. And it had lots of spin-off miniseries, and it had I think 25 issue monthly Turtles universe that did a lot of world building and expanded on some of the lore and stuff. So some of the most important stuff to read with that isn't just in those 100 issues. So if you ever go and take a look at that, be mindful of that. And the best way to read it, if you want to get it physically, it is pricey, but it's worth it. I don't have them, but they're awesome because I know people that do. The big hardcovers that collect everything in order, those are spectacular, and that's definitely the way to look at it. But you can get that in digital as well, to at least read it in order, I do believe. Chewbacca's Lover IDW combines every version of the Turtles. They even use fast forward. I know no one else will get that reference. Oh yeah, people will get that reference. And I think fast forward is in here separately from the 03 series. But yeah, I didn't know they used any of that. By the time I left off of it, it had used something from almost everything. And I know that Venus is supposed to have finally have been added into that series, but I didn't get that far, so I don't know what was done with her. You'd think that would be who they finally used as the female Ninja Turtle, but they transformed Jenica into one and tried to make her a major character, and I felt like she took over too much, and she was kind of, the thing you were supposed to care about, and I couldn't get into it. Okay, let me keep going here. Thanks for the comments, guys. Appreciate you. The 87 show is very difficult to rank because it is a huge part of my childhood, as well as most everybody that grew up when I did. It's not only the thing that got me into Ninja Turtles, like most kids. I mean, some people probably saw the movie first, but if you were my age at the time, I was like 6 when that movie comes out, you're probably already watching the cartoon, and you probably want to see that movie because you're into the cartoon. But it was also what gets me into action figures. It's a big thing that starts me in collecting. And I fell out of Ninja Turtles for a long time. I had that thing, and I had this with Power Rangers too. At some point, I decided to stop trying that hard to grow up, I guess, because just like with Power Rangers, at some point I fell off of it and then finally decided it was okay to still like that stuff and look at it and come back and start buying and collecting again. But it took longer with Ninja Turtles. I actually went back to Power Rangers, I think, even before I did Ninja Turtles, maybe. But anyway, it's been a long time. But 87 doesn't hold up the best. It's not as much fun to go back to as I wish it was. I did a review a couple of years ago of the first season and found a lot to still appreciate in that, even as hokey and corny as some of it is, where there was still a little bit more of a bite and an edge to it, like I remembered. And I think that first season kind of colored how all of us thought about the Ninja Turtles and got us closer to what the Mirage comics were, at least in our imaginations. Starting with, I've said this before, but with the looks of those action figures and the kind of, gnarly, angry expressions on their faces, to just how gritty and dirty the backgrounds on that show look, regardless of how little actual violence might be happening, and regardless of the, not especially adult themes in them, but they felt more grown up. And then as the series progressed, it got sillier and sillier and sillier, but I think if you were young enough, you still kind of filled in the blanks and you thought of it more seriously than it really was. It was kind of the same thing that we did with Batman 66, maybe. These are all points that I have made before with this stuff. But anyway, it's difficult to rank because it's important. It matters to me a lot. But yeah, it's fun to go back and look at with my kids, I guess. And there's a nostalgia to it, but it is not the show that I thought it was when I was a kid. It's really hard to put myself right back in that place. So I'm gonna have to split the middle and put it in the C tier, I think. And certain seasons are certainly better than others. If you go back and look at that show, and a little bit of it is finally streaming now on Paramount Plus. They've put up the first 2 seasons. Hopefully they're able to do more. I don't know why that's all they have. I don't know if there's still rights issues with parts of that show. I wouldn't think so because they've been able to put it on disc before. But sometimes your TV rights and your streaming rights and your physical release rights are all different. So I guess I'm not sure what's going on with that and why they only dropped the first 2. When 03, they dropped all of it initially. All, 7 seasons, including Fast Forward. But I would suggest, if you ever want to go back and you're curious about that show and you've never looked at it, watch at least that miniseries, the first 5 episodes, and then seasons 2 through 5 maybe are the sweet spot of that show if you can live with how much hokier it gets after that first season. And then it kind of gets lazier both in animation and writing as it goes along. It loses steam real hard after that, or at least that's around where I remember it kind of not being as good anymore when I tried to go back through more of it several years ago when I bought it on disc. The 90 movie is A or S tier for Ninja Turtles. I mean, I've never given that as high as a 4 on the old Rewind scale. I think I am going to go A with it. I know a lot of you guys would probably go all the way to S with it, and I love that movie. There's just a couple of story things that I've always had with it that keeps it from going all the way to S, probably. This is going to be blasphemy to people, isn't it? That I'm putting that on the same level as Batman versus Ninja Turtles. That's probably not quite right. That makes me think that Batman Ninja Turtles needs to go to B, maybe. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time with it because I feel like I've never given it full marks when I've reviewed it, and maybe Nothing Turtles would ever get those kind of marks though. I'm conflicted. It's kind of weird looking at it at the A tier. Okay, for now I am going to go all the way to S with it. What the heck? And that's not pure pressure. That's me feeling the same way as some of you guys going, but it's the best, maybe the best iteration of Ninja Turtles. No, I'm going to go A. And I'll tell you why. The more I'm thinking about it, it's because it is a really good adaptation and kind of summation of what's great about the comics, but I mean, it can't get to, maybe if it had sequels that went farther with it, and it I don't know, it's not fair to criticize it based on what didn't happen, I suppose. But I was just gonna say, it doesn't have an opportunity to get as weird as the comics. So I mean, there's that. Tonally, and atmospherically, it absolutely, ultimately nails that. But I think it's got to go to A because of some of the compromises made, particularly with the silly sound effects and music and stuff, where it was. We talked about this when we did commentary on it a couple months ago, where it's reeled in for the kids a little bit too much. Hey, look, a super chat. I'm going to read that. Bob the Hunt, the 90s movie better be at the top. I'm conflicted. I'm back and forth on it. But I feel like I have a good reason for not going quite S tier with it. He's going to leave. He's not going to watch anymore. Teddy, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. And that is not a name I recognize. So welcome if you have not watched us before, or if you've been around for a long time and you've just never commented, or if you're somebody I do know and you changed your name. Any of those things, welcome. And thank you so much for the super chat. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is how I got into the political landscape. Fascinating. And those are words I never thought I would hear put together in a sentence. It's my love and my hate. Those turtles are my everything. All in all, I give the Ninja Turtles a 6 out of 10. Wow, did you guys hear that? This guy in a super chat just reviewed the Ninja Turtles. like as Ninja Turtles. Teddy, don't feel the need to put in another super chat, but if you wouldn't mind elaborating, I would love to hear in a comment what the Turtles have to do with you're getting into politics. And I'm not into politics. We don't talk politics on the channel, but I'd love to know what the correlation is there. Yes, I will give him a gong. Ooh, that was loud. Apologies. I hit that way too. I probably just woke up the whole house with that. Okay, moving. Turtles gets me into the political landscape. 6 out of 10. Okay, moving right along. Ninja Turtles 2, I feel like needs to go somewhere between C and D. That is one of those things that I've got kind of a guilty pleasure thing with. Like, it's a lot of fun, but it's not great, and it is also massively compromised and should have led us to Dimension X and Quang and all of that like it was supposed to. And I always make fun of it for the fact that the secret of the ooze is that there's ooze, but it's so wonderfully quotable. It makes it difficult to go all the way to D, and I do think I like it better than Mutant Mayhem as an experience. I'm not going to say that the plotting and the writing is better than Mutant Mayhem, but I'd rather watch that movie, so I guess I'm going to go C. That's maybe a little too high. Ninja Turtles 3, my wife loves. I don't know what she sees in that. I have to go F with it, which might seem harsh to some folks, but like, even Mutant Mayhem, I'd rather watch over 3 probably, or at least I'm going to say it's a better movie than 3. It just doesn't have anything going for it. I mean, the outfits, everybody knows what the problem is with 3. It's a little bit of a torture device to look at, but some people might see that as kind of a so bad it's good sort of thing. I have that with 2. I can't meet 3 that way. I get so tired of the Turtles' voices in that and all of the, like, what feels like made up on the spot one-liners. It's just really grating, and it's super cheap looking, especially Splinter. And those outfits are nightmare fuel to look at, even more so than the coming out of their shells suits. Somehow that shouldn't be possible. Nick Young and Mutant Mayhem is definitely better than Ninja Turtles 2. And you know what? Honestly, it probably is, but it's a taste thing with me. I would rather watch 2. My tier ranking is not going to look like anybody else's, and that's why it's fun to go watch other people's videos that do these. Chewbacca's Lover, $5 super chat. At one point, I could have done a quote along for the 90s Turtles film and 2002 Spider-Man like you can with Batman 89. Don't know if I still can. Oh yeah, I'm probably closer with that, with the 90s movie, to Batman than about anything else. That's probably the second most likely movie I could do that with the possible exception of, I was going to say Wrath of Khan, but I don't even think I have it quite. I'm quite there with Wrath of Khan. James Curry, I think TMNT is bad mainly because it's so boring to watch for me. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I said it has nothing to go for it. There's a couple of things. Taking the Turtles back to feudal Japan is a good idea. And time travel might seem obvious, but I love the Turtles in that setting and seeing them in samurai gear and all of that. And it's one of the big things that really worked ultimately with the IDW Turtles and the reincarnation idea, which shouldn't have worked and ultimately did beautifully. And the second thing is, that kid that Raphael is passing around with is super cute and is actually pretty decent in that movie. Okay, moving right along. What is this? I can't actually tell. What is it? Ninja Turtles Team... Is this the TMNT movie? No, but this is the TMNT movie. So what is this? Somebody help me out with this. I can't tell what that is. I thought that was that movie. But that movie is here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and... Or wait, no, maybe this is the video game. Okay, this is the movie, and this is TMNT, the video game. That's what it is. Okay, let me get this put into place. So that is going to be a solid C or B for me. I think I have to, well, it's better, it's definitely better than 2. Maybe 2 shouldn't be that high. Wow. Yeah, this is difficult. It's hard when you're comparing them, right? I just don't like TMNT well enough to go all the way to B with it, but I think it is more than marginally better than 2. So apologies to 2. I'm going to actually drop it all the way down to D tier, and maybe it's fair to put those together, though, because Mutant Mayhem is a better movie than 2, but I enjoy 2 more. I'm going to put them on the same level. Maybe that's crazy talk, but that's what I'm going to do now that I'm looking at this with TMNT. I like the animation with that movie quite a bit. The models are a little bit too anorexic, but the textures are really good, especially when they do stuff with rain on the roof. That's great. It's the best Raphael Leonardo fight on screen in anything, at least that I've seen for my money. And I really like the characterizations of the turtles in that movie. The banter is really good, but the villain plot sucks. And the main villain is just lame and unmemorable, and it doesn't matter that it's Patrick Stewart. He doesn't get anything to do, and it is a cookie-cutter video game plot that was not worthy of the big screen at all. And also, I don't know why Lawrence Fishburne is doing narration at the beginning. So, for that reason, it gets the C slot, but I have to put it above these other 2 movies. Teddy, I like to look at every political, even through, maybe he means every political idea or notion or just politics in general, through the Ninja Turtles perspective. I don't see right and left. I see Michelangelo and Raphael. Fascinating. Thanks again for another super chat. Like I said, you certainly didn't have to do that. I was going to look for your comment, but I really appreciate it, man. What an interesting idea. Just the notion that you look at the 4 Ninja Turtles, and it would be different in different iterations probably, right? But the idea that you could see political notions in each of their perspectives on things as worldviews or ideologies, that's really cool. Kando Tor, he said he was joking. Oh, Teddy's saying he's joking in Turtles getting him into politics? Oh, well, I wish he wasn't, though. That's such an interesting idea. But you know what? It's kind of funny, too, if that is indeed a joke. Teddy, on a serious note, I don't really have that big of a connection to Ninja Turtles. In fact, the only thing I've seen is that crossover with Batman. Oh, hilarious. Okay. That's great. Well, you know what? I enjoyed everything about that, whether it was actually true or not. Boy, I feel duped. I feel really duped. Okay, next we get into... I want to say this is the 03 show. It's hard to tell with some of these if we're looking at the video game versions yet or not. And I will, spoiler alert, I will tell you, about half these video games are just going to go in that haven't seen section. And a couple of them I've played just a little bit of, and I don't know if it's fair to rank them. Another super chat from Chewbacca's Lover. Thank you guys tonight. Appreciate the support. $5 super chat. As a kid, I was moved by Turtles 3. I was really into the Turtles, finally finding people that accept them and not wanting to go back. Obviously, ... He's probably going to continue that and say, obviously, it's not all that good, but, you know, I was a kid, so what did I know? But no, I totally appreciate that, and I could see how, just like with the cartoon, I mean, I can see how you could get caught up in it and sort of fill in the blanks and use your imagination and make it better in your head than what you're looking at. Raphael wanting to stay back is, you know, I think it's forced and rushed and too easy, but it's maybe the most compelling thing in it, just because that kid is cool and you can sort of see it. Or was it Michelangelo that wanted to stay because of the girl he was hanging out with? Okay, now I can't remember if it was Michelangelo or Raphael. It's been that long since I've seen them. Yeah, some of these are video games, but I'm going to assume this next thing is the 03 show. Teddy, I do wish I was serious, though, because that would make me a more interesting person. It's a cool idea, though. Maybe you should write a short story about a politician that gets into politics because of Ninja Turtles. But you have to do your research. You have to watch more Turtle stuff than just Ninja Turtles versus Batman, okay? I suggest the 90 movie and maybe some of the, well, for getting the different perspectives on the Turtles. If you don't read anything, watch the 90 movie and watch at least the first season of the 03 show. That's probably all the research you really have to do. Raph wanted to stay because they were accepted. Mikey wanted to stay for Mitsu. Oh, two of them wanted to stay. Okay, says Nick Young. That's why I was confused about that. Okay, 03 I'm going to put in A tier. The only reason I don't go to S is because A, I haven't seen all of it, so I don't feel like I can speak well enough to the whole of it. B, it gets weird like the comics, but in some places way too weird. And like I said, if we were talking about the whole of Mirage, I wouldn't go all the way to S, but all that showing is the first issue, and so I'm thinking just the earlier Eastman Laird stuff. And I've talked about this before, but the 03 show, the consultant, the creator consultant is Peter Laird, and the 2012 show, it's Eastman, and you can really see their fingerprints on each of them. And it's really interesting to look at both of them that way, and it's super cool that both of them worked on one of those shows, because it gives you, again, a lot of variety, where, like, if your sensibilities are more toward one or the other, you're probably going to appreciate one of those shows more than the other one. And so 2012 is a little bit more straightforward and doesn't get quite as bizarre and crazy. But if you like the crazy, surreal, out there stuff, and you want it to get more Jack Kirby-ish, you want the 03 show. You want Laird, and it definitely isn't as good in the later seasons as the earlier stuff. I start to kind of lose interest in it once it goes to space with 03. I appreciate that it goes that far, but it does it a little early for my taste, and then it just stays in out there land for a long, long time. I have not cared for, just like everybody else, the parts of Fast Forward that I've seen. I've not watched that whole thing, and I hesitate to rank it, but the couple of episodes I've seen of that, yeah, it's pretty god awful. And so I can't, and that's part of that show. So it is technically a different show, but it's in the same continuity, and it was the next season of that. So that brings it down a little bit, even though we're probably also going to have to rank that somewhere. But anyway, I can't go to S. But boy, it's close. Game Boy Advance now. I have not played any of the handheld games, and I'm not sure what this is. So some of these are games based on 03. The only one I've played is Battle Nexus, I do believe. I'm a big Turtles fan, but I haven't looked at everything. There's a few things here I don't even know what they are. So some of these are numbered, and I think these are probably like PS3 games, or I'm sorry, PS2 games. I'm not totally sure. Sorry, I really thought Battle Nexus was in here, and I was hoping it was, because that one, oh yeah, that's this one. Okay, Battle Nexus I will rank, because I played probably, I don't know, half of that game, and it is, if memory serves, kind of it's not top down, it's what do you call it? Not isolinear, isometric. Isn't it sort of isometric? I can't remember anymore. But it's kind of beat 'em uppy. It's a little bit repetitive. Like, I don't want to say grindy, but I remember the levels being a little bit long, but it looks nice, and it was fun enough. I'll put that in, I don't know, B or C. I enjoyed it fine, but I haven't played it in a real long time. I mean, it's been probably, more than a decade. Teddy, okay, I have to flesh this out, this whole guy sees politics as Ninja Turtles idea, because I'm onto a great comedic premise. I think so, too. I think you got to work on that. He says, "See, yeah, I'm gonna be famous." Look, if you never use it, I'd like to steal it from you. So I'm gonna need your permission to do that if you never do anything with it, because I think I could write that. But if you're into politics, you could probably write it better than I could, because I'm not really a political guy. I would have to do no research for Ninja Turtles, but research for the political side of it. Nick Young, actually thinking about it, I do have to give Ninja Turtles 2 this. That opening where every New Yorker is eating pizza is so tantalizing. Yeah, and that pizza looks tasty, a lot of it. They did a good job. Like, they felt like a pizza commercial for no pizza place in particular. I mean, I think Pizza Hut was in that movie, because I think at that point they were sponsoring it in the first place. Like, they end up sponsoring the first movie after it comes out, but they weren't involved in it while it was being made in the first place, because they didn't trust it, just like a lot of other companies. And so it was Domino's in the first place. But I think there's some Pizza Hut in that movie. I don't remember now. AMC, I thought it was already in B, but that was Turtles Forever. Yes, that's Turtles Forever. Chewbacca's Lover, did you see the second part of my super chat? Oh, nope, I'm looking at it right now. Another $5 super chat. Finishing the last thing that he said. So really, he was really into Turtles, finally finding people accept them and not wanting to go back. Obviously, as an adult, it's really stupid, but as a kid, it really hit me. I felt for Raphael and Michelangelo. They need to try this idea again in something. Sure, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Thanks, man. Okay, so these other video games I've got to put at the bottom because I really don't know them. Like I said, Battle Nexus is the only one of these numbered ones that I looked at. There are at least like 4 03 Ninja Turtles games, it looks like. Okay, Ninja Turtles Smash Up is disappointing. And I got a little story about this real quick. So I worked at GameStop when that game came out back in like 2009, 2010, or it had been out for a little while, but we were still selling it there. I should say that. It was maybe a couple years old. And it was based on the designs for the movie, for the TMNT animated film. And it was just a clone of Smash, and it's hilarious that it even had the audacity to put the word Smash in the title. And I remember renting it and playing it, and it was, okay, it was fun enough, but it really was just a clone of that, and it wasn't even as deep in its mechanics as that game was, and it didn't have a very large roster of characters. Because if you're going to be a Smash clone, you want more characters. You want at least 20, 25 characters, if at all possible. And Ninja Turtles, you can come up with that many. Easy. You could have 50 characters in a Ninja Turtles fighter. But I only played it like over the weekend, and I wasn't like thrilled with it or anything, but I never bought it. And then years later, I found it again, and I went, oh, Jason would probably enjoy this. And it wasn't as good as I even remembered it, I guess. But I bought it anyway. And so I got it home, and it turned out that it was scratched up, and I don't know if I lost the receipt or if I bought it out of town or what it was, but I ended up not being able to take it back for some reason. And so later on I bought it again, and the same thing happened. And that time it was out of town, and I didn't have the chain of game stores in my area, so I couldn't take it back. And so I had to order it, and I got it in, and I finally got one that worked. And so I bought that game 3 times. And I put it in my player, I sound like an old person. I put it in my Wii, and I played it for 15, 20 minutes, and I went, oh yeah, that's right, it's this game. This game's not very good. I don't know why I killed myself trying to get that game. Anyway, I'm going to put Smash Up in D tier. I can't go all the way to F with it, but I don't really recommend it. In fact, I think some of the tournament fighters are probably more fun than that game ultimately. And then here's another video game. I don't know what this is. Mutant Melee. I've never heard of that. And that is 03 designs again. Yeah, so just a lot of video games are going to the bottom for me. And then the TMNT actual level game, adventure game, I own, but I've not played that either. And this game, I forget when this even came out, but I know I haven't played that either. So most of the video games I don't know. Okay, then we get into the Michael Bay movies. I don't have to talk about those for very long. They're disappointing. The first one is better than I thought it was going to be, than it had any right to be. And weirdly, Megan Fox was one of the better things about it. She phones in the second movie, but I liked her okay as April in the first one, and still can't even believe that I'm saying that. But yeah, it ain't good. I will go D with that. I can't go all the way to F with it. I really can't, just because it actually kind of surprised me in the theater. Out of the Shadows is probably, in some ways it's better and in some ways it's worse, so I'm just going to put it on the same line. Like, I know there's people that would put Out of Shadows in F because of some of the obnoxious comedy in that and the kind of, gross out, vulgar stuff with Bebop and Rocksteady, but their characterizations were okay. I just didn't like some of the writing with it, but You know, Shredder in the black leotard, doing nothing fun with him at all, and retconning everything from the first movie to try to appease fans, but then still not doing anything cool with him, sucked. It was awful. And then, you know, uh, Oliver Queen from Arrow being Casey Jones was really bad, and him being a cop and all of that. Like, it felt like CW Casey Jones. It's like, I see why you got Stephen Amell, because you just did what Casey Jones as a CW show would have been like, and then Krang was just bizarre, and really weird choices were made with that, where he's just constantly punching himself into his stomach. And it just had a really, you know, uninspired, horrible cookie cutter plot with what it was doing with the Technodrome and all of that. It was sad and disappointing. There was a little bit of a novelty to finally get to see a couple of 87 things put on the big screen, and then that novelty wears off in 5 seconds, and you go, oh yeah, but it's these people doing it. And everything about it just felt really corporate and cynical, and it's kind of sad. Okay, then you get the video game that was aesthetically anyway based on the IDW series, and that's Mutants in Manhattan. The design of it looks great because they're using the Santaluco stuff, but the gameplay was atrocious, and that game is kind of notorious now. It's not good, and so that's going to go to D or F tier. I'm going to put it on D because I didn't play it long enough to get like really angry with it, so I don't think I can go quite to F with it, but I remember it being pretty bad. If I'm conflating things and remembering that wrong, somebody let me know, but I remember that game being really bad and being notorious. I think I'm gonna jump to the end real quick here, because I think this is supposed to be, we just have the screenshot here, that this thing on the bottom is supposed to be fast forward, but they look like they have like sort of superhero costumes. So I don't know if that's the fast forward outfits or if it's something else. But something else. But I'm going to put that in D because I haven't looked at enough of it, again, to go all the way to F. I'm kind of tempted to just put it in haven't seen, but like I've watched a little bit of that, if that is indeed what that is. Okay, then we get into the Tom Waltz stuff, and I have to go... Yeah, I'm going to tie this with the Eastman and Laird stuff and put the earliest the earliest Waltz stuff all the way to the top, and then I don't know why there's 2 boxes for it, because this is Santaluco designs, so I'm assuming this is more comics, but both of those are the same continuity. So the only thing I can figure is that this is the earliest stuff and this is Cityfall. If that's true, I would put actually the first couple of arcs in A and Cityfall in S, but I don't know if that is indeed what that's supposed to be, so I'm just guessing at that. But that's where I'm going to put them, unless somebody can somehow tell me for sure what that's supposed to be, or if this other box is those designs but is actually dealing with some other, non-comic thing. I don't know. Chewbacca's Lover, that's the Turtles anime, not fast forward. Okay, I didn't know there was an anime. Interesting. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. But yeah, if that's some other extra media thing, I don't know what it is. Okay, Ninja Turtles Adventures it's interesting that's in here. Those are the comics based loosely on the 87 show, but that get a little bit more sophisticated in storytelling. So it's still those character models, and it's still sillier than, and a little bit more kid-friendly than the Eastman and Laird stuff was, but it doesn't have the standards and practices you had on TV. So it's the stakes can be sometimes a little higher, and it can deal with relatively more grown-up situations, but only relatively. I mean, it's still very cartoony. But I like what I've read of it quite a bit. I'm going to put that in B tier. I certainly would put it above the 87 cartoon. Chewbacca's Lover, we never got it in America. I don't think it even has an English dub. Oh, interesting. Okay. I'd love to see that, though, even just with subtitles, if there's a way to watch it at some point. AMC, did you ever play the 2010 or so remaster of Turtles in Time? I remember it being pretty divisive, but I really liked it. Thanks. No, did they change quite a bit with that? Like was a full-on remake? Yeah, I've never played that. Ninja Tony says that's the Japanese anime in the 90s. Oh, interesting. And by the way, that's a name I don't recognize, so welcome. Thanks for being here. I got to do more of these tier ranking things. I like more of a diverse smattering of it because I seem to be people seem to be finding them that don't typically look at our streams. So, welcome. Thanks for being here. Or maybe you're somebody that watches all the time, but I have not seen your name before. Okay, now we get into Rise of the Ninja Turtles, which this is going to be depressing for these last couple here, because I don't like this show at all. But once again, I don't feel right going all the way to F with it because I've only watched a couple of episodes, but it just wasn't for me, and it didn't feel like it really cared that much about the material. Where it was just using the Ninja Turtles as an excuse to make another very samey looking, like 2010s Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network kind of show, and I just didn't get it. It's that emphasis on teenage thing that Seth Rogen was kind of trying to do with the new movie, and I get that in principle, but it seems like an excuse to just be really immature and not tell, superhero type stories. And you could have more of an emphasis on the interpersonal character stuff between the turtles and relationships and they're being immature but trying to become more mature, and you could even make it a little bit more sitcom-y where it's sort of like the first live action Tick show, where it's kind of between all of the superhero-y stuff. But what little I watched of that show didn't really feel so much like it was doing that. Like, there certainly were some somewhat more action-driven things, but for the most part, it seemed like it was a lot more just about kind of sitcom-y situations that I didn't find funny at all. And I don't know. I just didn't get it. It's not what I want from Ninja Turtles. And then what is this? This looks familiar. It looks like that also. Maybe it's that movie they made. But I don't recognize the cover of it, so I'm just going to put that in haven't seen. There are two, and I'm surprised the other one's not in here. Maybe this was made a little bit earlier, though. I don't know. But there are a couple of animated Ninja Turtles movies that I have not seen yet. One of them is kind of a cap-off to Rise of the TMNT. It's really interesting that only got 2 seasons. Like, I'm not alone in not loving that. And they finished it off in a movie that a lot of people said was really good, even if they didn't like that show, and I just haven't gotten around to watching it. I'm curious about it. And then there was also a Half-Shell Heroes movie based on the Imaginext-esque toys that was about them going like back to the time of the dinosaurs or something. And I bought that, but I've never watched it. I don't think I watched that. So that's not in here either. Okay, finally, Ninja Turtles Next Mutation is absolutely F tier. That is the Power Rangers-esque live-action Ninja Turtle show. It just kind of feels like a dog chasing its tail, right? Where like you can't get Power Rangers without Ninja Turtles, and then to keep Ninja Turtles like viable and relevant, we just make Power Rangers that's Ninja Turtles, except even for a Power Rangers show, it's really bad. The choreography is awful, and it had less money, and obviously it didn't have a Sentai to rip off, but oh boy, is it painful to look at, and nonsensical, and kind of like watching Ninja Turtles 3 with less of a budget on a weekly basis. I mean, at least it had, silly like magic stuff, and it went to more comic booky places, but that villain wasn't very interesting, and Venus was a weird idea, and just, I don't know, everything about it was pretty bad. Dan and I were doing a series on that for a while, called Turtle Torture Time, and we watched probably half of that show and fell off of it. We just couldn't take it anymore. But anyway, that is it. those are my rankings. So most of this, of course, I've seen and was able to rank, and the majority of what I couldn't was just video game stuff. I'll see if anybody else has anything to say in the comments, and that yet. AMC Comics, it was called Turtles in Time Reshelled, and it converted all the sprites into 3D models. Oh man, I'll have to look at some gameplay for that. He's talking about that Turtles in Time remake. So when you said remaster, like, it sounds like more of a straight up remake. Although I guess it could kind of count as a remaster if they use the original code and they just, like you said, replaced sprites. I guess that would work. AMC says you can't download it anymore. Yeah, that's not surprising. Well, and I think Microsoft is shutting down the 360 store finally. I don't know if they've done it yet. If they haven't, I should check and see if there's anything I want left there. But I know that was about to happen if it hasn't already. Makura, Cap, you have Rise of the Ninja Turtle series and the movie flipped as far as which one you've seen. Oh, okay. Let me fix that then. Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. That is the poster for the movie. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And Bob the Hun had another super chat I missed. Thanks, man. No, I didn't notice that. Thank you. $2 super chat. You ever see the 2001 Turtles CGI test footage? If I have, I'm not remembering it right away. I did see the live-action test footage that somebody did recently where they built suits and did a kind of screen test to show what a modern kind of 1990 approach could be, and it's amazing. And boy, I wish somebody would greenlight that stat. That was really cool. Makura, you have the movie marked as seen, is what I mean. Yeah, I just fixed that, I think. I mean, I flipped them. Well, anyway, you guys know what I mean by this. I've not seen that movie, and I have seen a couple of episodes of that show. Okay, so that's my ranking. I'm going to leave it as it is, I think. So I only put 3 things up in S tier, and I still feel a little bit weird about not putting the movie there, but I stand by my reasoning. And I don't totally understand the 2 IDW Waltz Santaluco things. I guess Santaluco's not until after those first couple arcs, but anyway, if that's what I think it is, that's why I have them that way, but I could be totally wrong about that. Anyway, it was fun talking about a whole bunch of different versions of Ninja Turtles. And how long did we go here? Oh wow, almost an hour and a half again. Okay, well, that's just what it's like when I do tier rankings, apparently. But we had more folks chatting with me in the comments than I expected, so I got a little bit more loosey-goosey with it. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate you watching. Thanks for watching live. Thanks for watching after the fact. If you decided to do that, you guys are great. And I will see you again with lots more stuff here on Geekvolution. Tomorrow night, and I've actually got to go right now and watch this, but Austin and I are going to do a request for a 3D animated anime that I've never seen called film that's Lupin the Third, the First. And that was requested by a longtime patron of ours, Jujira. So thanks to him. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. And then Thursday night, Captain Logan show as usual. And then Friday night, if all goes according to plan, we're going to have a double feature for the Superhero Rewind commentary project, and we're going to be watching Spawn again. Probably the last time I will ever talk about that movie. Finally. Crazy we're doing that again. And then we're also going to be watching Mystery Men. So look forward to that. I haven't seen that in a decade, and I remember almost nothing about it. So it'll be interesting to go back to that. Richard's Victims, $5 super chat. Wow, what a name. Since it's kind of Halloween-y, can you do a pilot show on Stranger Things? Yeah, I will write that down as a possible thing to put on our short list. That's a good idea. We take official requests. I say it like that because we have a show called The Request. But if it's for a pilot of a TV show, and Jason is old enough to watch it, we will do it on that show. And you can officially request things on the $15 tier on Patreon. So I'm not going to promise it to you, but I appreciate the super chat, and I will think about it real hard based on that super chat. But I just don't want to make a promise right now because it wasn't with an official request. But we very well might do that, and I will write your name down, and if we do that, we will credit you for the idea. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you a lot. Partly I want to do it just to say Richard's victims on that show. Stranger Things. No, that's a really good idea. I have seen that whole first season, but it's been years, and I was doing stuff while I was watching it, so I don't really remember it super well, and I couldn't figure out what the fuss was about. Like, it was all right, it was fine, but I didn't get obsessed with it or anything. Chewbacca's Lover, it will not be the last time you talk about Spawn. You will find a reason to talk about it again in the future. Well, I'll find a reason to talk about Spawn, like the character, but it might be the last time we do a whole thing on that movie. But I don't know. I've said things like this before. Anyway, appreciate you guys. This was a ton of fun, and I've done 4 of these in a row now, every Tuesday, and I kind of, if I can, want to keep going with it, at least for the foreseeable future. You guys are great, and I'll see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan. Bye, folks.